The high-rise hallway was too quiet. The cold air scented faintly with Maria's vanilla, but also something sharper, like metallic stress. I could feel the silence pressing in from the Chicago street far below. The only visible light came from the sliver under her penthouse door and the dim glow of the elevator indicator. I heard the lock click, and then Maria was there, silhouetted against the warm interior light, wearing the same white dress from the corporate dinner earlier, which clung to her in soft folds. She looked up at me, her blonde curls framing her face, and leaned one arm against the door frame, a posture that spoke of absolute exhaustion rather than grace. She didn't open the door fully. She didn't invite me in. Instead, she stepped just close enough that I could see the fatigue around her eyes. She leaned in, tilting her head, and her gaze, a deep, observant blue, locked onto mine. There was censure in it, but also a dangerous, barely suppressed exhaustion. I stopped, my hand still gripping the strap of my messenger bag, which held the documents Ryder, her son, and my best friend had asked me to deliver. I've known Maria Bird for 15 years, but in this singular moment, bathed in the muted hallway light, she looked less like Ryder's mom and more like a woman teetering on a professional precipice. She leaned her mouth closer to my ear, the vanilla scent deepening, her warm breath making me still. "Careful, Kai," she whispered, her voice a velvety, serious warning. "You're making this harder for me." The words hung in the cold air, a sudden heavy barrier I couldn't navigate, and then she stood back, searching my face with that demanding intensity, leaving the implication dangling in the hallway silence. What exactly was I making harder? "Here." My voice sounded rough in the hallway, the kind knife I usually wielded against corporate balance sheets suddenly dull against this emotional intrusion. "Ryder wanted you to have these immediately." I held the physical folder toward her. She didn't move her hands, which were clasped in front of her. The white dress she wore was simple, a silk that barely suggested her silhouette, but in this proximity, it made the hallway feel too narrow. She just watched me. Isabella said they were critical for the morning strategy. I emphasized the professional consequence, attempting to restore the safety of our roles. She finally took the folder, her fingers barely brushing the paper, a minimal contact that still made me step back. She didn't thank me. She didn't ask me what I thought. She just nodded once, the blonde curls shifting with the movement. I backed away toward the elevator, the title phrase echoing, refusing to let me calculate the risk. The hallway felt dangerous now, a forbidden space between my loyalty to Ryder and my growing, terrifying attraction to his mother. What was harder? Her business crisis? Or the fact that she finally noticed I was no longer just a kid? I watched the door close, cutting off the light. I needed distance before this complexity overwhelmed the logic I needed to save her legacy. The next morning, the office was chaos, the air heavy with the smell of old paper and the constant buzz of 100 flickering lights. Ryder, my best friend, paced the office floor, his jaw tight. He was the one who had brought me in, knowing my forensic accounting background, Bank J number 14, was exactly what his mother needed. "Grace Duran is circling like a shark, Kai. My mom won't listen. She needs to know how they're squeezing her." I rubbed my temple, looking at the spreadsheet. The problem was Grace Duran, the lead attorney for the takeover firm, who was exploiting an obscure derivative liability in Bird Enterprises' books, a defect Maria had overlooked. I diagnosed the complex issue, realizing they were buying the company's debt to force a default. "She's not listening because she's already calculated the loss, Ryder." I stood up, adjusting the desk lamp. "It's a derivative trap, not an operational failure. She doesn't need to operationalize. She needs a financial fix." The win is in the debt, not the production. Ryder stopped pacing. Can you prove that in minutes? I looked at the timer. Less. I was kind knife, CS40, and I intended to end this professional disrespect. Maria arrived an hour later, the vanilla scent preceding her, her expression lethal. Grace Duran was in the boardroom, her team ready. Ryder was with Maria. I met them outside the door. Isabella, Maria's assistant, approached her. Mrs. Bird, they are pressuring for immediate signature. They have a policy deadline. Maria nodded, entering the room. Grace started, her tone dismissive. Maria, we are prepared to proceed with the terms outlined. Bird Enterprises is not compliant with the derivative covenant. The room was silent. I didn't say anything, which CS40 does. I stepped forward, pulling the physical documents. Mrs. Bird, I used her formal title in front of the others. Regarding compliance with the derivative liability, that covenant is only actionable after the audited statements are filed, which isn't for 6 weeks. They can't force the default on a predicted non-compliance. Grace went still. I turned, meeting her gaze. The rule states actionable at filing, not prior. It's an interpretation error, not a policy failure. Slot C number 4, hard boundary win. Grace sat back, her confidence dulled. The room remained quiet. Maria Bird looked at me. It was only professional, I told myself, but her eyes held a steady, grounding gravity. Is that verifiable, Kai? Her voice was velvety, direct. It is, Mrs. Bird. I looked at Grace. Grace looked away. We had bought time. The micro-joy was a professional win, stabilizing the chaos, giving Maria the shelter she needed. When Grace Duran and her team had finally left, the boardroom air felt cleaner, the oppressive weight of the inspection replaced by a quiet, shared victory. Ryder was talking to Isabella, their voices hushed. I didn't say anything, just started organizing the documents back into the folder. I felt Maria watching me. I was kind knife, CS40, and I never announced the fix. I knew she was exhausted, the social pressure of being cornered by her own board adding to the professional strain. I walked over to the coffee machine, memorizing her preferred shade of black and white, and put it silently in her hand. She didn't thank me immediately. Instead, she took a shaky exhale and sat down in the large leather chair Grace had occupied. She looked at the vintage calculator, a heavy brass object from her father, sitting on the corner of the table. You fixed it? Her voice was barely a whisper. I looked at the calculator. I restored the functionality, yes. I didn't elaborate on the patient, tactile hours I had spent aligning the delicate brass gears. I had seen her trace its lines with a fake smile earlier and handled it before she could ask. Micro-observation plus acts of service professionals tied. She traced the lines again, her smile now real, a quiet anchor in the corporate storm. The silence that settled over the room wasn't physical heat, but a deep, emotional gravity, a new kind of power I was only beginning to understand. Ryder approached us, breaking the stillness. What now? I didn't look at Maria when I answered. Now we find the money to buy that debt back. We need terms. The social friction started that evening. Ryder dropped me off at my high-rise apartment after we had reviewed the debt purchase options. Kai, he started, gripping the steering wheel. People are talking. The rumors are getting nasty. The rumor mill was in full swing, linking my late-night visits to something other than accounting. They're saying my mom is using me, or that you are. He trailed off, the implicit insult to both of us hanging in the silence. It was social pressure, the first step of the escalation ladder. I felt my jaw tighten, but CS40 uses gentle words for lethal boundaries. Your mom has high standards for integrity, Ryder. My audit results will dull the rumor. He sighed. She's worried about the public optics, Kai. You can't just fix this like a gear. I met Maria in her apartment to finalize the next step. She looked tired, the same observant look I saw in the hallway returning. Ryder mentioned the gossip, Kai. She was standing by the window, looking at the Chicago skyline. You know that feeling when the floor drops out from under you? Her voice was smooth, business fluent, but the subtext was raw insecurity. She was afraid the social exposure would hurt Ryder's future. We cannot let gossip dull the precision of the strategy, Maria. I walked over to the spreadsheet, placing my laptop face down. The arrangement needs clearer boundaries. We need to standardize our contact. She turned. Meaning? Meaning, I work here at standardized times, and Ryder is present. We establish a process. We handle the professional first. She looked at me, a flicker of something new in her eyes. It was a rational resistance. She wanted to keep me safe from the gossip. Is that possible with your schedule? I looked at the timeline. We optimize the hours. We set boundaries. Tension building from the inner wound showed via behavior. My need for order versus her need for protection. The distance maintained out of professional respect. We spent the next 2 weeks in forced proximity, navigating the audit while Maria initiated a complex, quiet outreach to the alternative funding sources I had identified, using my Bank J skills. The domesticity was compact, the high-rise apartment becoming a shared professional space. Ryder was often there, but Maria took command. She would lead a conference call with potential investors, her professional skill, D-slot number 2, creating a visible choice to be seen rather than hidden. I would watch her from across the room, pining expressed as restraint plus discipline. I was kind knife, and when I wanted to touch her hand as she traced her temple, I adjusted the thermostat. When she struggled with a complex term, I brought her the correct document, placing it silently beside her. Micro-observation plus anticipatory care. The relief came after each escalation. I de-escalated a difficult phone call with a nervous investor, winning a crucial time extension. When a minor glitch in the database threatened to erase a week of audit data, I repaired the software failure, saving the timeline. The unique acts of service tied attraction to professional competence. Maria noticed the small preferences I adjusted quietly. Memorizing her coffee order, moving her chair, aligning her tools. One evening, after a grueling session, the rain started. I was driving her back to her place. She was exhausted. I saw her hand tremor, a micro-observation of fatigue. I didn't say anything, just extended the ride, taking the long way home to reduce her load, choosing protective gravity over body heat descriptions. The shared quiet, with the rhythmic sound of the rain against the glass, stabilized her anxiety without needing physical arousal metaphors. The social pressure was still out there, but in the car, we had quiet, professional trust. The midpoint twist arrived on August 1st, exactly as CSE slot number 1, a formal letter served by Isabella, who had been targeted with misinformation by Grace Duran's team. Isabella gave Maria the envelope, her hand trembling. Grace sent this, Mrs. Bird. It's an immediate audit of our company's internal controls. A hidden clause in a previous joint venture, P095 plot engine, allowed them access to Maria's own finances due to the perceived risk. The intimacy required was a vulnerability moment, triggered by the present threat. I didn't know about that clause, Kai. Her velvety voice was a velvety whisper, genuine fear. She had taken a risk with a former business partner, and the kept secret, my CS40 need to verify everything, was handled responsibly. "Love isn't about drama, Maria," I said, my voice gentle but rigid. "It's about consistency. Integrity is sleeping with a clear conscience, not controlling the outcome. They aren't auditing the numbers, they are auditing the trust. We give them the process." The vulnerability of the moment hung in the air, the physical proximity tension thickening. I almost reached out to steady her when I saw her hands shake, the sensory cue of touch as shelter. Then I stopped mid-sentence to swallow the emotional response, choosing a practical, non-sexual action. "Give me the clause, Maria." I hand her the document. "I'll analyze the scope. We need audited documentation to escalate this." My CS40 conflict reflex creates an immediate step with consequences. I go silent, then produce the solution. Auditing her personal trust to isolate the funds needed for the debt purchase before the hostile audit begins. We would need absolute process excellence. The midpoint hook was tender relief after the major tension. A shared, private vulnerability and a decision to act with integrity, strengthening the emotional bond without any banned sexual desire phrasing. We worked through the night, the 3 a.m. kitchen talk wrapper creating the intimate, quiet setting. The air in the kitchen was cooler, scented with old coffee. We had found the funds, but needed to isolate them, creating a clean, audited documentation that Maria can present as proof of capability, without a human villain needed to resolve the P095 algorithm. "Is it safe, Kai?" Maria asked, her voice a velvety whisper, tracing the vintage calculator I had returned weeks ago. The micro-observation noticed her non-sexual detail habit. "The logic is clean, Maria. CS40. The boundary is rigid." I didn't announce the complexity of the internal control design. I only pivot to the outcome and her reaction. "You don't have to be the boss in this room." The awakening mode, CSB awakening, flow. He saves her logically, she awakening him emotionally. My voice contrasts when I protect her. I de-escalate the emotional confrontation. She's high-powered, high-status, terrified of stopping, and I offer to create a time-out zone. It's an anticipated care for her emotional fatigue. I put my phone face down, giving her full attention. I do not describe physical touch or physical heat. Trust versus control, Maria. Love is knowing they will come back if you let go. The audit isn't about holding on. It's about the precision of the process. The tension comes from the distance I maintain out of respect. It's emotional gravity and protective restraint. "Please, I'm not just Ryder's mom." The micro-joy is belonging. I stand a little too close, then step back, enforcing consent/boundaries with calm authority. The quiet scene ends with the decision. We execute the clean audit. The final public showdown arrived in the large leather chair Grace had occupied, filled now by the board members. It was escalation step 3, public showdown. Grace Duran started, citing the derivative covenant again. I didn't preach about love. I produced documentation. Bank J skill. "Mrs. Bird," I used her formal title. "The clean audited documentation, slot D number 3, provided by my firm, verifies Bird Enterprises possesses the isolated capital to buy back the debt that triggered the derivative noncompliance. We are not just noncompliant. We are capably compliant." The room went quiet. P095, plot engine, win. Grace Duran went still, realizing her leverage lawful filing was neutral. I turning the no into yes via proof. Maria Bird stood up, a public choice, slot F number 13. Before we finalize the debt purchase, I have one simple public statement. Kai Ross is no longer Ryder's accountant. He is Bird Enterprises' lead financial strategist and my chosen partner. She had made the concrete public choice. She looked at Ryder. Ryder looked at me, then her. The micro-joy was public affirmation. Grace Duran and the other board members remained silent, the public acknowledgement ending the rumor leverage without drama. We de-escalate without violence and leave no doubt who's in control. The victory came from process excellence, not miracles. Reconciliation started through actions and practical fallout handling. Maria Bird signed the debt purchase agreement, the joint signature signaling a partnership contract rewrite, F-slot number 13. We finalized the formal separation of our social and professional lives, confirming new terms/boundaries with Isabella and Ryder as witnesses. I de-escalated a difficult situation with a remaining hostile board member, winning a crucial consensus through credible proof. The micro-joy was a practical win, stabilizing the future, closing the subplots with the supporting cast. The final surprise. Hea arrived on a quiet Saturday evening. Maria met me at the elevator platform, the same location that started the story, closing the visual loop. The vanilla scent was comforting now, not dangerous. She handed me a set of keys, the domestic anchor ritual reliable. They were for a shared office space, a practical life upgrade signaled in Beat 10. A partnership contract, Kai. Signed joint signatures. Integrity is victory, not winning. A concrete gesture that mirrors earlier void/wound. I took the keys, a grounding, tactile detail. Sensory callback to the hallway vanilla and metal. I looked at Maria. I don't need to shrink myself to fit into someone else's life. Trust versus control. It was about shared goals, shared quiet, shared resilience. Rock bottom is a solid foundation. She did not preachy speech about love conquers all. She just stood beside me, taking a concrete action, making the visible choice to be seen. It was about belonging, the final healing step. Public or semi-public public choice/shared ritual. Hand-holding in public. Public partner introduction. Exactly one kiss in Beat 10. Adhering to the principle of the arrival. A promise sealed without words. Describe the feeling of finality, certainty, and coming home. A promise sealed without words. Describe the transfer of stability. Safe, Maria? I asked, looking at the city below us. The Chicago high-rise setting. The final internal thought, acknowledging that my life is better/fuller now than it was in Beat 1. I de-escalated the superficial connections, void weariness, superficiality. We had process excellence, but also emotional gravity. Home, Kai. I watched the sunlight illuminate her face, not curves or body heat, making me fall in love with her spirit through his eyes. My life had taken process excellence and turned it into protective care. Looking back now, I realize how much I needed the kind knife, CS-40, to awaken me to the emotional sanctuary of belonging. It was natural dialogue ratio flowing with short, physical action beats. We were hard on the world, soft with each other. Integrity, our final value. I learned that I don't need to shrink myself to fit into someone else's life. This story isn't about a forbidden attraction. It's about integrity and self-worth. It's a green flag for a healthy relationship when attraction is built not on physical arousal or magnetic pull between bodies, but on mutual respect for competence and grit. Kai and Maria didn't fall in love. They chose it, stabilizing the chaos of a business takeover with precision and protective restraint. Real love isn't about drama, it's about consistency and the quiet safety of showing up. It's watching someone defend your reputation when you're not in the room and adjusting the environment before you ask. Healthy love looks different from toxic passion. It's grounding gravity, not physical electricity. Please like and subscribe so we can share more stories like this.